On November 4th, voters will be deciding on more than just who they want to be the next president of the United States or on their own local politicians. There are 7 ballot questions voters need to be informed about before heading to the polls. Tonight's South Dakota Focus will lay out the facts on those issues and will give you an in-depth discussion on initiated measures 10 and 11. That's the 2008 ballot questions on tonight's South Dakota Focus. We're going to the polls right now.
You're watching a production of South Dakota Public Broadcasting.
Good evening and welcome to South Dakota Focus. I'm Richard Muller. Tonight we're going to lay out the facts on all 7 ballot issues. So if you don't know how you're going to vote, or even worse, you don't know what the ballot issues are, then stay tuned because tonight's program is about helping you become a more informed voter. This is how the hour will go. For the first half hour, we're going to have an in-depth discussion with those for and against Initiated Measure 10, and that'll take up the first 30 minutes of the program. Then we'll switch gears, focus on Initiated Measure 11, the abortion issue. The remaining ballot issues will be summed up in a video that we'll share with you in between. As always, we're live and we'll be taking your phone calls and questions and emails throughout the hour as well. So, knowing tonight's rundown, make sure if you have a question about Initiated Measure 10 that you call in or email us during the first half of the program. If you have a question on the abortion measure, Initiated Measure 11, then save your phone calls for the last half of the program. The toll-free comment line for both is 1-877-TALK-PTV, and our email address is sdfocus@stpb.org. That's a mouthful. Let's get started. Let's meet our guest. Representing the Vote Yes on 10 campaign, their field director, Dena Espenscheid. And representing No on 10, David Owen. We've got lots to cover, so here we go. The information we gathered from the Secretary of State, Chris Nelson's office website says Initiated Measure 10 is an initiative to prohibit tax revenues from being used for lobbying or campaigning, to prohibit governmental bodies from lobbying, to prohibit government contractors from making campaign contributions, to prohibit government contracts when the contractor employs a legislature or legislative staff member, and to require contracts with government bodies to be published. 2 separate groups working for and against the measure. Each of you has a time to define your own issue in your own words. I'll start with Dena.
Thank you. We want you to vote yes on 10 to bring some common sense, public disclosure and ethics reforms from the national level down to the state and local level. These are the same standards we already require by our laws, our federal laws in Washington, D.C. Things like stopping taxpayer-funded lobbying. Your tax dollars should not be paying for lobbyists. We already have this again at the federal level. For example, when the federal government took over Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, they had to stop paying lobbyists to lobby Congress. We also want to stop what's called pay-to-play contracting. This idea of, because you gave me a campaign donation, I'm going to reward you with a state contract. That's just wrong, and it uses our tax money as political pawns. You know, we already have this at the federal level. Joel Dykstra and Senator Tim Johnson, if you go on their websites, there's 2 check boxes that you have to check off before you give a donation online. The first says, I am not a federal government contractor. And the second says, I'm not making this donation on behalf of a federal contractor. We want to bring that same type of thing right down to the state and local level. Finally, we want to open up a website, a lot like we already have at the federal level with usaspending.gov, that tells us who gets contracts, which corporations, who owns those contracts, what are they supposed to do, when are they supposed to do it, how much are they getting paid to do it, and most importantly, is this a bid contract or no bid contract? You know, these concepts are overwhelmingly supported by the taxpayers of South Dakota, and our opponents know that if they tell the truth, they'll lose this election. They're running a big lie campaign, and we're going to get into that this evening. And it's funded almost entirely by the ultra-liberal, out-of-state National Education Association, whose agenda is just counter to the values of South Dakota. And that's why I know when this is done, you're going to vote yes on 10 on November 4th.
Dave, why do we vote no?
Initiated Measure 10 is a gag law that will adversely affect tens of thousands of South Dakotans by either making it almost impossible for them to speak out to elected officials or take them away from the process that we're using right now of elected officials. They make reference to bringing federal law to the state level. Well, that'd be fine if they were only taking out people who have contracts the way federal law does, but they have a completely convoluted definition of immediate family that includes step relationships, step parents, step sisters, includes nieces, nephews, guardians, and domestic partners, and prohibits them from contributing. Not just being used as a pass-through, it prohibits them from contributing. They've got a bizarre definition of no-bid contracts that not only says you can't be involved in contributing directly to a race that you're involved with, but you can't be involved in any of the elections at the state level for any office, mayor, city council, any place, and they include in that definition all of our public school teachers, many of our firefighters and police. This thing is overreaching, it's overbroad, has been brought to us by some people who, ironically, while calling for transparency, have used a specially created organization to hide over $600,000 of contributions. It has a bad impact on the voters of South Dakota. It should be rejected.
Okay, Dena, cite me a couple of examples of a problem that this legislation is going to solve.
You know, one of the big problems that we have in our state, I think, is taxpayer-funded lobbying. This idea that your tax dollars are being paying lobbyists. Thomas Jefferson said that to compel a man to furnish contributions of money for opinions he disbelieves is sinful and tyrannical. I wonder how many of you all out there sitting in your living rooms right now support the NRA, the National Rifle Association. I bet you did not know that your tax dollars right now go from the county commissioners and from the city councils and commissions to groups like the National Association of Counties and the National League of Cities, who then take your tax dollars to Washington, D.C. and lobby in favor of gun control. So while you're supporting the NRA, your tax dollars are supporting the exact opposite. Also, we've got an issue with, a couple years ago, the Supreme Court had a decision called the Kelo decision. And what this decision said, that it was legal for counties and municipalities to condemn your property in order to put up something with a bigger tax base, like a mini mall. Now, Representative Stephanie Herseth-Sandlin thought this was wrong, and I agree with her. And she actually sponsored a bill that would stop municipalities and counties from getting federal tax dollars if they condemn your property to put up a mini mall. Your tax dollars went to groups that are lobbying right now against her legislation. And again, that's just wrong. At the state level, over the past 3 legislative cycles and the last 3 election cycles, we've had taxpayer-funded groups work to keep high cell phone taxes, work to increase alcohol taxes, increase property taxes, and keep the tax on food, which right now affects every single one of us sitting in our living rooms, especially our senior citizens and our young families. You know, a vote yes on 10 will make these groups that lobby use donations instead of your tax dollars. I want to go back to the first issue I mentioned. That was gun control.
Time out. Dave, hi, welcome back. Are you a registered lobbyist, Dena?
I was a private registered lobbyist back in 2006. I am not currently a registered lobbyist.
Dave, are you a registered lobbyist?
I am.
Okay.
The South Dakota Chamber